Can a sense of community be created around something other than friendship? At Kanike in Bangalore, 4 photographer artists have come together to create a very interesting community space that is partly their professional playground, a workshop, sometimes an exhibition space, and oftentimes a space for them to just come and work in the same space but separately. It is an interesting model that also showcases the search for community that many people feel. In this episode, I spoke to 2 of the founders of the space, asking them why they chose to work this way and what that has done to their work lives.
So what I wanted to kind of look at, is really different kinds of workspaces, especially post-COVID. People have kind of understood that you can have hybrid systems for work. Also with work from home, after a few years, I think people do feel that loss of community space. So we're also kind of looking at how can you sort of create that for yourselves. And I think the story of Kanike is very interesting. Tell me, how did this space come together?
I had a residency in Berlin, and I was staying in a residency where we were 23 artists all staying in the same building. And we used to have this community kitchen, and like there was so much of like bonding between artists and sharing work and all of that. And I thought, this is a great model, and how come we don't have much of it in Bangalore? Around that time, Vivek also came back from a residency. We spoke about having shared, kind of studio space, and we thought, yeah, I think this is necessary and we need to do it.
So what year was that?
This was in 2019,
Okay.
sometime in November.
But you're both photographers.
So basically, I come from an analog era. So I started photography with film. Somewhere along the way, of course, we were forced to digitize ourselves, and we thought that was going to be the new medium of choice everywhere. Just after a few years of working with the digital medium, we realized that analog still had its charm, its beauty, and something very attractive about using physical things, very, very tactile things.
And not knowing what the end result is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the element of serendipity was also there very much. So in 2013, I happened to be part of an art residency in Goa called the Goa Cap, where we had 2 wonderful people, Edson and Madhavan, basically, who were creating a community of people who would not just explore the traditional methods of photography, but also the historic processes, going all the way back till 1830s, 1840s. So that's where I first had my stint with something called the salted paper prints. And I just fell in love with that medium. But it took a long time for me to have that kind of strength to be able to set up a studio of my own. And I think it changed when I went to Munich on an art residency, and I was spoiled with a huge studio where I could do anything I wanted. So that gave me, the real strength.
So I've seen. I mean, when I came to the studio, that you have a developing space within, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you're able to do this now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you need a darkroom for it.
Who are the other people that are part of Kanike?
Primarily me and Indu, sometime in 2019. Very soon, Krishanu Chatterjee, another photographer, and Aparna Nori, a little while after that.
Actually interesting, right? When personalities come together, and I'm just curious. Obviously, you guys were friends before.
Yeah.
What about the 2 other people that are now part of it? I mean, how did you both know them before?
When I first came to Bangalore in 2002, we used to always hang out in a coffee shop called Java City.
Okay.
And this was
Every
on Church
Bangalore
Street.
story has a coffee shop reference.
Yes. So Java City became the space adda for all of us who didn't have family here, who came to the coffee shop. We used to just like take our time off and sit there. And I met Krishanu then, and I knew he was, this photographer, and he was working. Over a period of time, we kind of lost in touch and all of that. And then Vivek told me that, he started a darkroom in his bathroom in his own home. And we said, let's go check it out, because one of the things of setting up Kanike was we wanted to have a lab, developing lab, a darkroom. So that's how, then after many, many years, I met Krishanu and then realized, oh my God, we're doing the same thing. And he's recently done a project about Java City, and there's so many different full circles that happen there. Aparna and Vivek used to go for not Goa, yoga classes together. And that's how they
Friendship
kind
is
of,
gold.
yeah, and that's how they met. And yeah, we kind of came together because I think all of us are similar age category, and we realized that have a strong nostalgia toward the idea of analog and towards the idea of touch and feel and making,
Yeah.
developing things with our hands.
Neither of you live in this area, right? We're in a very residential part of Bangalore.
Yeah.
My space here and my partner, I write on homes, he works on residential architecture, and so it feels right to be sitting in a residential neighborhood because it informs your work. For you guys, how did the decision of locality sort of come together?
I've lived here for 5 to 6 years
Okay.
in Cooktown. Krishanu and Aparna also lived here. And Vivek was close by.
Yeah, I was staying very close by to Cooktown. And also something beautiful about the neighborhood. It's very liberal. You know, I see a lot of creative practitioners living and working out of Cooktown. So it seemed like the ideal setting for us, and combined with the fact that it's quite close to the center of the city.
Are there specific spaces that are sort of attributed also to yourselves? And I'm also just curious about, when four people are working together, even if you're friendly or friends, the nature of being in that space together for actually a considerable amount of your work day, it changes equations. And, did you guys start with some sort of manifesto of how this is going to function, or what was that like?
To be very honest, we just came together because we really wanted to be together in terms of like sharing a space and all of that. And we didn't assign any rules, regulations, anything, or where we should sit, any of that. I think it organically just came together. I, being an artist working in multiple mediums, I had more things than the others. And then we kind of kept moving in different parts of the space. I think eventually we figured out a rhythm to the how and...
I mean, we were just happy to have a dark room for ourselves. We've been trying to work out of bathrooms and some makeshift spaces where we could process our films and make some prints. I was the one who was moving about and more sort of nomadic, so I would sit in one room during
He's
1 week and then shift over
last
to
one
another
to
one.
settle. I would say he's finally found his spot.
It's also because I sort of don't like monotony. I don't like to be in the same spot for a really long time. So I keep shifting around.
I came to the space for the first time when you had that exhibition recently as a result of the workshop. And I remember everybody taking pictures of that desk where you've got that little saucepan that's been converted into a lamp. There's so much of yourselves and this sort of personality in it. Whose table is that, if I may ask?
Krishanu's, yes.
So in that way, I've realized that all three of us function very differently. Vivek is the most clean and the most organized, and everything has to be perfect. He would spend hours cleaning his keyboard before he starts.
That's just an excuse not to work.
And Krishanu is chaos. If there's something that has bursted in the darkroom, we know who that is. So he cannot work in organized manner. I'm kind of in between both of them, we would say.
So what has that been like for you? Because that's like me, I need everything in its place. And then every time someone leaves something, I'm like the one that's moving things. So what is that like for you?
No, I'm okay with that. I mean, I do have some order. I mean, it's not like it's not like I'm paranoid about where things need to go. It's just that it has to be like the way I left it yesterday. But we rarely come into each other's spaces.
I think the only conflict zone is the kitchen.
Yeah.
Because then we are trying to understand this has to be clean and that can be a mess.
Have you guys sort of developed any sort of rituals? I mean, do you share meals together once a week? I mean, I know Aparna lives in Singapore part of the time, right? So, I mean, are there any rituals that have sort of come out of this shared workspace?
We do try once in a while to cook and share food, but because it's not a monotonous kind of space, there's no 9 to 5, and also a lot of us are traveling. So I think we can't really maintain too much. The only consistency I would say is Julie, who's our studio cat, getting food on time.
the cooking together thing is happening more often than before, and sometimes it's basically friends who come in, fellow artists, interns. These guys also had some barbecue party.
On New Year's Eve.
Yeah,
We did
couple of
a
months,
whole
yeah,
barbecue
yeah.
thing, and we opened it out, asking people to come in, and a lot of people just walked in.
Even on your website, you talk about sort of being able to operate out of the power structures of the artwork, right? And a certain autonomy. And I think that's something that really resonated with me as well. And I think because when we think of galleries and we think of institutions, we think of institutions in a particular way. There's a scale and a structure, but there's also a beauty in small. It can still be an institution, but it can be smaller and it can be more organic and it can be a bit more ambiguous. So I'm just wondering, for each of you, what has this physical space autonomy meant in just the way that it has informed your work?
None of us have had a formal education in art, so for me at least, it's basically pursuing something that you really and completely believe in. Sometimes my themes are mostly to do with memory, nostalgia, loss, longing. So I sort of maintain a balance. So I do have commercial projects which I do on the side, but when it comes to my work in the darkroom, I'm completely independent. It's not for the next show that I'm preparing, or it's not to cater to a certain curator or a palette. So I keep myself completely independent that way. But at the same time, I allow different experiences to inform my work. I'm reading something or writing, my interaction with other writers, architects perhaps, designers. And I love that bit, how these influences creep into my work. Yeah.
But it's essential, right? In a way, you have to interact with the world in order to be able to sort of capture it. And Indu, for you?
I always wanted to have a space with no agenda, with nothing to do. And I think an extension, because Kanike was here, an extension very close by, just a kilometer away, I have Namma Katte, which is now 4 years old. And I really enjoy that space because it's a space for people, women and children, to just do nothing. So I think these two spaces really complement and also talk a lot about just idea of community. And we do not structure anything in our space. A lot of these things just organically happen. Like I went for a talk in Mysore and I saw this artist who was working with very much of a natural material, and I asked him, do you want to just come and show at Kanike? And he just came and we had a very beautiful show. Sina, this German artist, and we did this whole photo and cyanotype workshop where we invited artists to come and apply, and 8 artists were chosen to be a part of it. It was sponsored by Goethe Institute. And it was a 3-day workshop where a lot of us interacted with cyanotype, looked at various different ways to showcase the medium, and look into various narratives. Each of the artists brought very different narratives to the space. And we worked with them, and then finally it ended up as an open house to kind of then say, okay, we did this over a past period of 2 to 3 days and this happened. And it was really remarkable because it was just a 2 to 3 day workshop.
Yeah.
But they really went around and produced some really amazing work. And I think that also was part of that whole idea of community, because all of us were there together. We were all helping each other. Your printer's not ready. Okay, just hold on to this. We'll look at that particular. So I think that is what we celebrate at Kanike as well. Even if we are doing, let's say, the photography work, somebody is at the darkroom saying, hey, I'll switch on the tap for you, don't worry, you finish this. So there's always that camaraderie that has really helped us make more work.
But how does then in those kind of situations, like costs and stuff, because there are some costs, right?
Of course.
So how do you manage those costs?
So that was sponsored by Goethe. So in that case, the sponsorship comes from them, and they take care of the rent and also the artist honorarium and things like that, and they make sure that there's food and everything done. So we do not have one consistent, people sponsoring us or anything of that sort. It all depends on different ways. That also the space, we had Kannada classes happening in that space for the longest period, where there was a teacher who said, I want to do this, and we will give you part of that for the rent. to the space. So I think every model is very different. There's no one particular consistent way in which we work.
I mean, there are periods when the studio sustains by itself through workshops or through long engagement with other institutions. And sometimes it's just, we just pitch in and make things work.
Because I think what's interesting about it is the fact that I think it's always interesting to show that there are other models possible.
True.
Right? Which are satisfying at many other levels. And I thought what was really charming about the way that it was being shown, one, that it was by the artist for, but there was like a sort of people sort of coming and going, and ability to kind of look around the space. It doesn't feel intimidating in any way, whether you understand, don't understand, it doesn't matter. You mentioned community, and I think that's the most, like, the fundamental thing about this. And I think also with COVID, that's the thing that we realized, that we actually do need to work in proximity with other people. How do you bring in the neighborhood? How do you bring in just the general population to come and see and things? How does that work?
I think one of the primary thing is that when any of us are inside, we keep the door open. So it's like, we just let anybody walk in. When we had a recent art market, there were two joggers who were just jogging, and they just walked in and brought work, and we were just wondering how there is a certain openness to the space. And I think by now a lot of people do know about us, and there are these Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups, so we do speak about what's happening at the studio. Yesterday we were just leaving, and then two of the people from neighbors came in, walked in, and they just wanted to see the space. And so we have a lot of engagement that way. We're also very careful about making sure that the neighbors are informed whenever we have any kind of event, and we invite them.
So there are two things to this. So one is the immediate community that we live in, and then sometimes on their walks, evening walks, they just drop by and say hello, and sometimes bring us some budgies.
A lot of budgie runs. A lot of people go for the budgie run, and then they'll stop by and say hello to us.
The other thing is to also pull in a lot more of the younger artists, because we don't have a gig at any of the institutions, like a teaching gig. But people do find out about us, and a lot of institutions, people from institutions like Shrishti or Chitrikala Parishad, they do come with a certain amount of apprehension about the space.
In what way?
Whether it's going to be very formal, or can we do this or not? Can we wear shoes inside? How do you operate things at the darkroom? So we kind of, make them really comfortable, and to just hang out. I mean, you don't have to do anything. You can sit in the front courtyard that we have, and have a chai or a smoke, and you just feel comfortable. So, and then after a while, I think they want to engage a little more with what we do. And when we are doing any of the processes, hey, can I also print one of my photographs? And I say, yeah, of course. Yeah. And then they imagine a narrative, they imagine a body of work that they eventually want to produce at the studio, and we sometimes make it happen.
Are there sort of unexpected collaborations that have happened because of this space? I mean, any individually, or maybe even just together, or is that something that's even, maybe that's an ambition and it hasn't yet happened?
I think all four of us during the peak of COVID, we learned about SPB Balasubramanian dying. We said, let's just make a book. And all of us decided to just come together and publish a book together, and we called it Jolly Bird, which is after one of his songs. And one of the things with most photographers is like this watermarking and saying this photo was taken by me. And this was a very conscious decision that we did, that all four of us would not name under every photograph, and it will also have like diaristic kind of value to it, and with empty pages for people to fill in and what was going on during the whole COVID. So it was all four of us and our reflections of what COVID meant to us. And that, sold out. So, but it was a great thing for us to also practice as artists, and that was one of our first collaborative projects. We also did a soap, which is also very interesting. It's called Nanu. In Kannada, it means I. So it is imprinted on the soap. So the idea was like after a few washes, the nano will fade away. So it's also the idea of trying to promote community, of saying that, this obsession of I and in this whole world, this hyper individualization that's happening a lot. We felt it was also interesting to kind of talk about it through this very small thing of just a soap. And we had somebody from Kerala actually make it for us. And so there are these small collaborations. We also made a tote bag with
the women's cooperative in Belgaum.
Yeah. So these things are something that we are exploring. But again, we get caught in our own individual projects and things.
You have a lot of mementos and objects and things that are in that space. How does the decision making, or is there even a decision making of what goes in, what doesn't come in, or is that even a factor?
Unless it's too big in size, I don't think we really care about.
If it obstructs physical
in.
movement.
Yes, then
It's just not only photography as a lab, but we also have an olfactory lab. We also have a pottery thing. And organically, we are seeing various different growths in, like Krishanu is working with autoclave and all of these like different yeast-related works. And so in that way, I see that organic growth with us.
What is the olfactory lab?
So I set up the olfactory lab close to 2 years ago. It was initially set up to archive smells of Bangalore.
How do you do that? I was always curious about, because you did a show. You did a show recently, right? How do you do that?
So it's just a process, a steam distillation process, where you put the material through the steam distiller and then you titrate and understand as to what are the smells. When I released the book Vasane, it was all about the different smells of Bangalore. So initially it was a 1 liter steam distiller, which is a very tiny thing, to immediately going to a 20 liter one. So Kanike had that space for me to be able to expand. And so it's like changing seasons for me. So my part of the studio, now it will be all concentrated on smell. So everything of that would come out. And then when there was a time when I was making these pots for a project, and that was, so the entire setup was all pottery.
Right, the conversations that happen when there are people working on very different things, and what comes out of that can be so interesting.
Yeah.
How has it affected your works individually, this sort of cross-pollination?
I mean, these people are the first sounding board, right? So, when you have a new idea, when you're experiment with something new, these are the first people you go and try it out on. So that way, and it's very casual. It just happens over a cup of tea or something like that. Hey, I was thinking about it. What do you think? And somebody immediately like shuts it down and like saying it's ridiculous,
Or we would say, hey, this artist did it.
That's
He did it first.
Yeah. But it's nice. I mean, you can be really silly with whatever you're coming up with. With absolutely no veil.
And there's no hierarchy, right? Unlike most workplaces where you have a structure of some sort.
Every decision, I think all three of us come together.
But do you always agree? I'm sure you don't.
No. Definitely there are.
What are the kind of conflicts? I mean, other than the kitchen zone, but what are the other kind of conflicts that sort of come up? Micro battles, let's call them.
I think a lot of it is admin based. I think all three of us do not like admin work. Like, paying electricity, and we have 2 electricity bills that come in, and then there's, the rent that comes in, and then current conflict is the freezer door has cracked, and it's like we're figuring out who will take the initiative to just fix that freezer door.
I'm the procrastinator of the studio, so I take a really lot of time before I get work done.
A lot. But that also shows, like, I mean, in his work, when he procrastinates, he's also studying and reading, but he will say, I'm going to do this project. 2 years later, he'll be still reading, but he will do it perfectly. When it comes around to doing it, he'll do it perfectly. Me and Krishanu will jump into it, break things will explode, and then we'll figure out, we should wait for some time.
When you think back, particularly you, I guess, Vivek, when you think back to then working alone, what are some of the things that you feel like has happened to you, just in terms of the speed of work, or versus now when you are working with this group?
Yeah. So one thing is the shared knowledge. Somebody's already made the mistake before. So when I know that my prints aren't turning out the way that I imagine them to be, then I, just a quick consultation, and then you know what needs to be done.
How do you sort of create spaces for yourself? I guess for people and who are not always there at the same time, it's not that complicated. But also both of your work is, there is a lot of introspection and clamor and sound and distraction is counter to that. So how do you create space to be?
So I think Vivek has a separate room, so he's able to kind of isolate, and we call him the stealth movement. He like in between conversation, he's gone. He disappears because he knows that he has to work, and he goes into the room. But me and Krishanu kind of face each other, so we kind of look at each other in this constant banter. But we've come up with this code that if one of our headphones are on, then we need silence and we need to like concentrate on work. But irrespective of that, there's somebody walking in and they want to know about the space and all of that. So
no, we also know each other too well to offend each other. We know our body language really well, and so we know when to stay away from.
Yeah, Krishanu, when he gets into a certain edit, we know we should not be anywhere close to him. He'll smoke little extra cigarettes that day. So these are like clues we know, like, okay, let's stay away from him.
So Indu, you have another space, in the Namma Katte space, right? How is that how did you sort of put that together, and how is it being used now?
Yeah. So I've been working in the Anganwadi systems on and off near my house continuously. I was working. Then in Lingarajpuram has 6 Anganwadis. I've been on and off working with them. But eventually I realized they were not as democratic as I wanted that space to be. I would have teachers say, oh, this people cannot come in, that cannot happen, this cannot happen. So it was all very restrictive for me. And I felt, why can't I just open my own space? And surprisingly, on that street, the only beautiful tree, and under that there was a garage, old garage that was available. And I said, okay, let's just do this. And I've been working about safety for women in public spaces. So I didn't want a closed door space. So I said, why not have a space where women just come and sit? And there is already this idea of Ashwath Kattes and this idea of Katte culture in Bangalore, where there's a tree, and under that there's a lot of people come, sit, rest. But very rarely you see a lot of women using these spaces. So I wanted something similar to that, and there was a tree. I made a katte, and then this was a shutter shop. So once you open the shutter, anybody can sit. And me being a doctor, they thought I was opening a clinic, and then they thought I was opening a tailoring shop. They didn't understand the concept of a space to do nothing, and it comes as a price of luxury. Like for them, the idea of sitting and doing nothing is because they have a lot of work to do, and in general, even growing up, my mom would be, why you're sitting simply, finish this, finish that. So I've always wanted a space like this.
And particularly for women, right?
Exactly.
You don't really see women sort of just comfortably loitering in public.
Correct.
Right? Even at a chai shop, I know there are only men. You feel
always,
sort of outnumbered and somehow uncomfortable.
Yeah. Initially it was, of course, difficult because nobody understood what it was. Today, people have taken over it, and they use it for whatever they want, or they just like, a lot of ajis come, sit there, lie down, they're singing. The other day, 2 ajis came together and they were just singing old Kannada songs together. So it became a rest space. It became a space to just sit around and gossip, and sit around and just cut vegetables, or just talk about, oh, that person's this one died, and that, all of this like regular chit chat of that area.
In India, we have so many unwritten rules for everything that everything is intimidating to somebody in some form, right? And particularly as a woman, there's so many.
Yeah.
So how were you able to kind of break down that invisible barrier?
I think just time. I think it's over a period of time. It was not supposed to be a 1-week space. For me, Namma Katte is like minimum 20 to 30 year project. It's not something that, I started, it had its fanfare and I'm going to end it. It's something that will consistently remain open. So it took time, of course. The first year, there were a lot of men who came and said this is an anti-men establishment and they wanted to shut it down. We had, this lady, and they tried to put photographs of different gods in the place. And I said, I don't want one particular god. And we just put a mirror, and whoever walks in is like, their own god. And we had some people who protested saying, at least you should put Puneet Rajkumar's photo. And all of these things were very interesting to see the dynamics of, but even to today, completely accept it. Saying that, I'm just going to Namma Katte, and it's just become a space to hang out.
Going back to Kanike, then you also have residencies there. And now, how does that work? For instance, how do you decide who can come and participate there as a resident?
Well, we've had a few residents so far. One happened because of the association with the Goethe Institute. The others just randomly reached out through our website or social media.
How do you choose?
I mean, there isn't as such a process in place. I mean, they write to us and then we just take a call whether it makes sense or not.
Yeah, we just try to understand what the intention of the space is. What do they want to kind of learn or study?
Because they can use the facilities of the space, right?
Exactly.
So,
of course.
And the output, is the output then exhibited there, or is there any of that kind of thing, or can they just come and use it? And
that also depends on them. Like, let's say they want an open house at the end, and they're open to we are happy to support that. Or if they want to just learn, then that is also possible.
Or they might choose to do a workshop at the end of the residency. So we've had lots of different kinds of people.
We've had a theatre person come and write a theatre show there. Yeah.
And what about your mascot, the cat?
Julie.
She remains. People
are
are allergic to her.
Only...
that is one criteria.
How did Julie come to be part of this?
Oh, she just walked in one day pregnant. And she knew the only person who would let her stay is Vivek. Went straight to him. She's his favorite.
And then she had a litter of 4.
Yeah. And I adopted one of hers.
And we spent the next month figuring out where these kittens will go to.
Yeah.
What are your sort of ambitions, if at all, for Kanike?
For us, I think we keep wanting to just have the space exist. And it's not easy for us because we are not fully self-sustained. So we are trying to figure out various different ways. Each of us individually also go out and learn different processes and come back and teach each other. So for us, it's also to have a treasure trove of all these information and a lot of the photographic analog work what is being done at Kanike is also very much tried and tested for Indian weather, which is not because whatever we learned is all in the Western, kind of climate, and that is very different to what it is in India with the humidity and heat and the changing seasons. So we've kind of figured out a formula to kind of let each of it work. So we experiment with each of these processes for close to a year or so, and then have a template as to say, okay, this works for us. So it's in no textbooks because we've realized it's something that because we've tried it there, we want to learn more and more and have more and more people engage with us.
And also to get younger artists to kind of embrace this medium. Photography doesn't necessarily mean getting very expensive equipment. So even with the simple joy of making a cyanotype, which is also very much considered to be photography, doing photograms. So we enjoy all of that. And basically to slow down the process, we are in an extremely
That's one of our core values.
Yeah.
Any process, anything that's slow, that's immediately part of us.
Yeah, so we had something called as the pre-visualization, what Ansel Adams really celebrated, to be able to imagine a scene before it was photographed, but nobody does that anymore. So, I mean, you're forced to do all of that using the analog processes. And it's funny because many of these processes are so close to the narrative that you want to talk about. And a lot of people, I mean, who are born into this digital era are completely unaware of these wonderful processes. So we want to keep that alive and spread the joy.
For me, looking at your space, it's just this sort of the ability to work at a different scale completely and at a different pace. And and that there is this alternative way of doing things
Yeah.
that, you know, can actually be much more felt, I think.
Yeah.
At least that was what was so interesting to me about the space. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your story
Thank you.
with
Thank you.
us.
Thank you so much.